Okay, so you've been thinking about maybe quitting cannabis, and we're really excited to jump into this ebook. It's called Effortless Cannabis Cessation. Think of it like, I don't know, like your cheat sheet to understanding the science and how to make this whole process, this whole change, way easier, way less of a struggle.
Yeah, and it's got all this stuff about psychological principles, neuroscience, and just practical techniques. And we're going to try to pull out the most important stuff for you.
Yeah, yeah. Our mission today really is to help you understand why you might even be dependent on cannabis in the first place, and then like really effective ways that are, backed by science to navigate quitting.
Totally. And I think one of the best places to start is by just looking at like the psychological side of things.
Yeah.
So the book, it really focuses in on this neurotransmitter, dopamine. It's kind of that key player when it comes to pleasure. And when you use cannabis, the THC basically floods your brain with dopamine. It's like
Wow.
this temporary surge. And over time, it can actually make your natural reward system, it makes it less responsive.
Oh, wow.
Like research suggests that if you use it chronically over and over, it can lead to tolerance. And then you have a harder time experiencing joy from like everyday things, like your
Wow.
joy meter gets turned down,
Mm.
which is kind of a bummer. And it could even impact your thinking too.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially thinking about the whole habit loop thing too.
Right.
The book, it talks about these habits like cue, routine, reward.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you always use cannabis, like say at a certain time of day or in a certain place,
Well, yeah, for sure.
those can become like automatic responses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Precisely. They become these really powerful triggers, those environmental cues. So like even when you finally decide, okay, I'm going to quit, you might go back into those same situations and it's like, boom, those cravings hit you again.
Mhm.
And the ebook, it really highlights how important it is to identify those triggers,
Yeah.
and then figure out how to manage them. It's like a core part of breaking those ingrained patterns. Think of your brain like a well-worn path. You know, you've been walking on this path over and over. Quitting is like, okay, we're going to choose a new route now,
Yeah.
even if the old one feels a little easier at first.
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
Totally, totally. And it's not even just like the habits though, right? There's the emotional part of it too,
Yeah.
right? Like using cannabis to help with stress or anxiety.
Right. So that brings up this idea of like emotional dependence.
Okay.
And a lot of people, they use cannabis to get this like temporary relief from negative feelings.
Hmm.
But then it ends up creating this cycle.
Oh.
And sometimes it might even mask some deeper mental health issues that are going on. It keeps you from developing like healthier ways of coping.
Hmm. And shifting gears a little bit, we want to talk about what's going on in the body. And the book talks about the endocannabinoid system, the ECS. What is that all about?
Well, it's this like vital network in your body that helps regulate all sorts of things, like
Mhm.
your mood, your appetite, how well you sleep.
Right.
And the thing is, the THC from cannabis actually interacts with these specific receptors in your brain
Mm.
called CB1 receptors, and it basically ends up disrupting how your ECS normally works.
And then that disruption, that's what leads to all those awful withdrawal symptoms, right?
Exactly.
Like cravings, anxiety, having trouble sleeping.
Yeah, when you cut back or stop using cannabis completely,
Yeah.
your body, it's like it's trying to rebalance itself.
Right, right.
And the book, it lists a whole bunch of different withdrawal symptoms, like sleep problems, anxiety. You might even have some physical discomfort. And it's important to say, like, it's not usually dangerous,
Uh-huh.
but it is a really big hurdle to overcome.
Yeah.
And, how intense it is and how long it lasts, it really varies from person to person.
So it's really this combination of like the dopamine changes, the habits that you form, the way you're relying on it emotionally, and then the physical withdrawal symptoms. All that together, it makes quitting seem like so difficult.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But understanding it, that's got to be the first step, right?
It really is, because it means you're not just relying on willpower anymore. Once you know how all these mechanisms actually work, then you can use these really targeted science-backed strategies to address each of these areas.
I like that. Okay, so then the ebook talks about the power of mindset, and it starts with neuroplasticity, which is basically the brain's ability to adapt and change.
And this part is really encouraging. So we know that using cannabis chronically, it strengthens those craving pathways in your brain.
Hmm.
But your brain is amazingly adaptable. Like it can form new connections, it can change. And the book, it really stresses that by making a conscious effort and doing positive things, like exercise, mindfulness, picking up a hobby, things like that, you can actually rewire your brain over time. And that means those old pathways get weaker and you build up new, healthier ones. So your cravings, they're not set in stone. Your brain can pave new paths.
That's great.
It's really remarkable.
The book also mentions CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
How does that fit in with quitting?
So CBT, it's a type of talk therapy, and it helps you, first of all, figure out what those triggers are that we were talking about.
Right.
Then you work on developing coping mechanisms, and you learn how to challenge any negative thoughts that you might have about cannabis. Like, a lot of people, they tell themselves, it helps me relax. And CBT helps you question those thoughts and come up with new ways of thinking. It also helps you get better at solving problems in general. And one of the key parts is something called cognitive restructuring.
Okay.
And that's where you really learn to identify and change those unhelpful beliefs that you've been holding on to.
And then there are a couple of other approaches, right? I think the book mentioned them very briefly.
Yes, yeah. So one is called motivational enhancement therapy. And this one focuses on resolving any hesitation that you might have about quitting. So it's about strengthening your desire to change. And then there's contingency management.
Okay.
And that one uses positive rewards to encourage you to stay abstinent.
So it's like giving yourself a little reward if you hit certain goals or something.
Right, exactly.
Nice.
And then finally, the ebook talks about this idea of creating a new identity. So it's like you're moving past seeing yourself as, a cannabis user.
Yeah.
This is super important if you want to be successful in the long term. And the book, it really emphasizes that you have to redefine yourself. You have to connect with your values and your interests and your goals that don't have anything to do with cannabis.
Right.
It's all about letting go of that old identity and focusing on your strengths and building this new sense of self that's based on well-being and growth. And things like exploring new hobbies and building supportive relationships, those things really help with this whole shift.
So the big takeaways here are, understanding how dependence works on a scientific level, talking about things like dopamine, habits, the ECS, and withdrawal, and then taking all that and using the power of your mind, using neuroplasticity, all those cognitive techniques we talked about, and then really redefining your identity.
Exactly. It's like quitting isn't just about stopping something. It's about actively creating a life that's more fulfilling and more authentic. And this ebook, it gives you this really strong science-based foundation for that whole journey.
Love it. So that's a really powerful framework. Now I want you to think about this. Imagine yourself free from cannabis. What does that version of you look like? How do you feel? What new things are you doing? What possibilities have opened up? Just sit with that for a little bit after this deep dive.